Drucker Forum TV continues, and we happened to grab Pierre Le Manh, the CEO of PMI, out of the panel this morning. How'd that panel go? Was it fun?
A lot of fun. You know, I usually don't like that slot that much, the first one in the morning when people are still sleepy. Yeah. But
You're welcome.
Well, yeah.
We try to keep him on his toes. No, I appreciate it. Obviously, the CEO of Project Management Institute, PMI for short. And can I start out with a really silly question? Is that okay?
Yeah, if I don't have to answer, then it's fine.
So, why isn't this is where I want to start. Why isn't every leader a project manager? I think maybe we start out with a technical definition, because I'm reading through a lot of your work, your LinkedIn posts, and I'm thinking, I have this feeling that every single leader should probably be, at least in some capacity, a project manager. So can we define what you guys call a project manager, and why isn't every leader one?
So I think we have to distinguish between project management skills that are in fact useful to a lot of people, not just leaders. You know, all of us need to have some project management skills, including in our day-to-day life. But if you think about project professionals, people who do this for a living, day in, day out, they manage projects. That in itself requires proper training and practice. You know, that's the difference.
Yeah, so it's about proper training and practice. So, does the definition, though, of project manager need to expand? Does it need to change? Because what you just said right there, my word, it feels like every layer of leadership should be trained in that. So does it need to expand and change over the next 10 years?
Well, you're right that the world needs transformation. We are aware of that. And of course, disruptions, regulations, everything pushes everyone and every organization to transform. So the ability of an organization to manage successfully its projects is critical if you want to win in a competitive landscape. And it's true as well for governments, it's true for NGOs, everyone has a transformation agenda. So you're right, the ability of organizations to manage projects successfully is critical. But to do that, you still need to have some people who are really doing this as professionals, and then they will guide the entire organization, because it takes time to learn how to manage projects successfully.
Oh, that's good. So you need the people that focus on it. You need those people who are focused on, here's the date, kind of Drucker's SMART goals, but here's the date, it needs to get done, and here are those individual elements to get you there. You need those people that remain focused on those objectives.
By the way, it's not always a date.
Interesting.
Some projects have some projects have a launch date, but you have projects that are constantly evolving. Let's think about tech, for instance. You launch a new app, a product. That is a project in itself, but there will be a date when the product goes out, but then it will be refined, you know, like in a very iterative way or incrementally. So this notion of a life cycle of a project has evolved enormously in the last decades.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's not really these specific end dates anymore. It's just monotonous and never ending. It depends.
You know, if you have the Olympic Games, there's a date for that usually. So you got to be ready for that date. But for a number of projects, the end date or the life cycle is not that clear cut, right? It depends a little bit on forces that are external to the organization. Clients' demand, regulation, AI, any disruption may create some changes in the design, in the life cycle of the project, and as a project professional, you need to be able to manage that way. That's what we call agile, right? The way you are able to introduce some flexibility and agility in your system and processes to get this done.
So here's a question then, with the change in going from project to product, right? Which is what you said, which is actually, I love that, project to product. With that change, and with timelines kind of getting blurry, I kind of feel like some leaders have taken that almost this vague, middle, mysterious work where nothing really gets done, and it's always kind of, there's almost no accountability in some cases. Are you seeing this project to product move lead to kind of this vague area of no responsibility, no accountability, where people can just kind of come and work on the thing of the day and they're never held to a standard? Do we risk going too far that direction?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not saying that all projects are evolving into product management.
Yeah.
You know, this is true in some industries, true for certain type of projects, but if you run infrastructure projects, you know, you don't really think about a product that will evolve all the time. I mean, the life cycles will be much clearer in a way, and then there will be some maintenance, but there's still this notion of a project with a start date and an end date. So it's the evolution to product manager or to product management is only true for certain types of projects and certain industries and certain type of situations. So you talked about accountability. This is very important because precisely a project professional is fully accountable for the delivery of their projects. That's super important. And whether you use a methodology where things are predictable, so we call this predictive project management. Think about having a clear plan and then you execute on the plan. Whether you do this or you use more agile approaches where things are more incremental and iterative, the accountability remains the same.
Yeah, very interesting. So I want to move on to a new topic. I know you travel a lot. So first of all, are you tired? How you doing?
I'm always the same. I think this is my usual state, so I don't think about it. It's in the head.
So obviously we've tried now. We did the great remote work, and dare I say remote project management experience or experiment, I guess I should probably call it. So there's a very, very big question there, which is, do projects get done with remote teams as effectively as face-to-face? Because you spend a lot of your time face-to-face and investing in people right in front of you. Did we try the remote thing and did it work, or do we need to go back to face-to-face to get stuff done?
So first of all, project professionals have been used to work with distributed teams for a long time. So that was not totally new for them. And it's kind of, if you think about it, logical in a way. If you form an operating team, so a team managing a business, you probably want them to be as much as possible in the same areas, in the same places. But a project, people were thinking, this is temporary. This usually has an end date. So it's okay to have teams distributed, and you need experts that may not be available everywhere, right? So project people, project professionals, were very well prepared when remote work became the rule, for a while at least. So it's not that they did not have to adjust, because of course there is some adjustment there, but it was not as massive as you could see in other types of professions. Now, that being said, PMI, for instance, we have about 800 full-time employees, and we have thousands of volunteers who lead our local chapters in all countries in the world, or relationship with large corporations, governments, everywhere. We are a super distributed company, and in fact, during the COVID, what happened during the pandemic, we actually shut down our offices, and we only kept offices in China where, frankly, remote work is not particularly appreciated there. But outside of China, we don't have offices anymore, and we actually meet in places like today here at this forum. Some of us are here, and then next week and the week before, we have those events where we actually meet, but we do not have offices anymore. And I'm not saying there are not some complications that come from that. There are many complications, but it also enabled us to have a more diverse workforce. We used to have our headquarters in Philadelphia in the US, but we're a very global organization. So being fully remote has enabled us to recruit talent everywhere. And that has been also a massive upside for us. So we try to live in this environment. And of course, we talk a lot about the effects of remote work. It's more difficult to connect. It is a little more difficult to get this sense of belonging. It is, for leaders like me and my team, it does mean that we have to travel as well to make sure we do have some face-to-face time with people, with our employees, with our community as much as possible.
So you mentioned the complications of connecting and belonging. What's the rhythm? Is there a rhythm that PMI, yourself, you're like, there's maybe this rule that you abide by, like you should meet quarterly, or you should meet when it gets to this point, or is there some magic formula that you've developed or that you use?
Not really. I mean, my executive team and myself, we meet once a month in person, usually in New York. So everybody flies in. I live in New York, so it's easy for me. That's one travel that I don't have to make. Sometimes in a different city as well. With our community, we have indeed at least a yearly meeting in each of the regions, and then more meetings that happen locally. I have set a rule. So the problem, is that it is not very homogeneous. So some of our people, some of our employees tend to travel a lot because this is the nature of their jobs, and they do meet with people, so they feel this sense of belonging constantly nurtured. But we also have people, and we have to recognize that, who do jobs that do not necessarily require meeting with people. Think of accounting, and even people doing development, software development, these people, unfortunately, do not have that many opportunities to meet with others. So we have set a rule that at the very least, once a year, you need to be in person somewhere meeting with your team. And we reinvested the money that we were spending in real estate in organizing such events, paying for travel, not being too cheap, right? Because there's nothing worse than asking people to come over to a meeting and treating them cheaply, right? So you have to spend some to make sure that you counterbalance a little bit the potentially negative effects of remote work.
Yeah, I love that. I love the balance there. Once a year, at least for you guys, once a year. But it is interesting
for everyone, right? And
everyone,
for many people, it's way more than that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of people have this idea that like, oh, if we don't have real estate and everyone's fully remote, we'll save so much money. But it sounds like it's almost a wash. Like you either invest in physical real estate or you invest in getting people physically present. But either way, you have to invest in connecting and belonging and connecting with each other.
You know, I'm saying, so people, the US is the country where people were, in the first place, more remote than any other market, right? Oh. It's the nature of the country is very large. Teams were already very distributed. So, of course, when COVID happened, people realized that, oh, they were working remotely with people, but even before, they were already working remotely with a lot of people on their own teams. So now a lot of CEOs want people back, and they say that people are back, but frankly, when I visit other companies, especially in New York, and I walk around, it's empty. Oh. You know, that's the reality. So at one point, someone is going to make the decision, do we need these empty offices everywhere? Now, the question is, don't get tempted. Resist the temptation of taking that money and just putting it down to your bottom line. Like some of that has to be reinvested, if not all of it, in in-person events or other things, development, anything that connects people together, because otherwise, long-term, I feel, it's going to be more difficult for organizations to stick to their purpose, make people engaged, happy, and then what happens if people are less happy, less engaged, is that your organization is going to be less resilient.
So last minute here with you, Pierre, but you have some really simple advice for getting ahead in any organization. With our last minute, can you share that briefly? I love this advice.
Say it again.
Yeah, so you have some really simple advice for getting ahead in any organization about inheriting a mess. Can you explain what that means?
Oh, yeah. You mean like how do you become a CEO? First of all, you have to really want that and think hard about it because it's a very specific kind of life and maybe not the thing that is going to make you happy. Yes, when people ask me, how do you move up the ladder in organizations, I usually tell them two things. First of all, growth and comfort don't go very well together. So you have to force yourself once in a while to take a risk. You know, change company, change sector, change country, do something that is going to take you outside of your comfort zone. And usually, if you thought about it enough, and it's not a crazy move, it's going to build your muscle memory, and you'll be better at that.
Because we have limited time, I have to cut you off. Sadly, we have so much. Pierre Le Manh, CEO of the Project Management Institute. I'm Justin Brady, and this is Drucker Forum TV.